My girlfriend made me cut off a female friend. But now she's furious because I asked her to do the same with her new guy friend. You know what, Tim? Laura said, her eyes glued to the screen. I've had it with these alien invaders. Tim looked up from his laptop. What's up, Em? They're just too much to handle on my own. Laura sighed, setting down her controller. You're not playing with me enough anymore. Tim leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning the room. Well, I've had a lot going on at work lately. But hey, I'm here now. What do you say to a little co-op? The room was bathed in the soft glow of their monitors, a stark contrast to the inky darkness outside the windows. Laura's laughter filled the space as she eagerly nodded. You bet. Their friendship had been like this since the day they started working together. Laura was the new kid in the office, a little shy but incredibly sharp when it came to coding. Tim had taken her under his wing, showing her the ropes, and soon they found themselves bonding over their shared love for video games. It was an escape from the mundane, a world where they could conquer and save together. But it had been a while since they'd had one of their gaming marathons. Tim had noticed a shift in Laura's demeanor lately, a certain sadness that she tried to hide. He hoped that a night of virtual adventure would lift her spirits. As they sat side by side, their characters on the screen slicing through enemy lines with practiced ease, Tim couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Laura's responses were quick, but her eyes didn't sparkle the way they used to when they played. The banter felt forced, as if she was going through the motions. It was like she had a secret she wasn't sharing. You okay, Laura? Tim asked, pausing the game. Laura took a deep breath. Yeah, just tired. Nothing to worry about. Her voice was brittle, and Tim knew her well enough to know she wasn't telling the whole truth. But he didn't press further, not wanting to ruin their rare moment of bonding. As the night grew later, the air in the room grew heavier. Laura's mood didn't lighten, and Tim found his own mind wandering to his girlfriend, Rachel. Rachel had been understanding about his friendship with Laura in the beginning, but lately, she'd been dropping hints that she wasn't okay with it anymore. It wasn't like Laura was a threat, but Rachel had her reasons, and he knew he had to respect them. But as he watched Laura's shoulders slump, he felt a pang of regret for the ultimatum he'd given Rachel 2 years ago, when she'd met a new friend who made her feel just as uncomfortable. The game continued, the digital battles playing out in stark contrast to the internal ones waging in Tim's mind. Laura's words echoed in his thoughts, a reminder of the cost of ultimatums and the fragility of trust. He made a silent promise to himself that no matter what, he'd be there for Laura, even if it meant navigating choppy waters with Rachel. After all, isn't that what friends were for? The next day, Rachel returned home from her office with a spring in her step and a secretive smile. Tim could sense she had something to tell him, something she thought would make him happy. But when she finally sat down beside him, her expression grew serious. Honey, she began, I met someone. Tim felt his heart drop. What do you mean? His name is Mike, Rachel said, looking into Tim's eyes. We had lunch together today. He's really nice, and we've got a lot in common. Tim nodded, trying to keep his cool. Okay, that's great. What's the problem? Rachel took a deep breath. Well, we had a few drinks, and we might have had a little too much fun. I didn't mean for it to go that way. The room grew tense, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Rachel had crossed the line that Tim had drawn for Laura, and now she was doing the same with Mike. Tim felt a twinge of anger, but he knew it was hypocritical. He'd given Laura that ultimatum, so how could he hold Rachel to a different standard? Look, Tim said, his voice measured, I know we've had our issues with this before. I just need you to understand that it makes me uncomfortable. Rachel's eyes searched his. I know, and I'm sorry. It won't happen again. I value our relationship more than anything. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Tim knew he had to make a choice. He could either hold on to his past anger and push Rachel away, or he could learn from his mistake and trust her. Okay, he finally said, I believe you. But let's be clear, no more secrets. And maybe we should talk more about what we're feeling before we jump to conclusions. Rachel leaned into him, her arms wrapping around his waist. I promise, I'll be more open with you. Tim sighed, holding her close. Thank you. In that moment, he realized that the real battle wasn't with Laura or Rachel, but with his own insecurities and the fear of losing what truly mattered. It was time to move forward, to build bridges instead of walls. He had to trust Rachel, and himself, to make their relationship work. And maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to mend the fences with Laura too. But for now, he had a new chapter to focus on, one with Rachel by his side, navigating the complexities of life and love in the real world, not just on the virtual battlefield. Days turned into weeks, and Rachel made good on her promise. She included Tim in her conversations with Mike, inviting him to group gatherings and making an effort to involve Tim in her newfound friendship. Laura, on the other hand, remained a distant memory, a ghostly presence in the shadows of their shared past. Tim felt a pang of regret every time he thought of her, but he knew that some bridges were too far gone to be rebuilt. One evening, Rachel suggested they all go out for dinner together. Her, Tim, Mike, and a few other mutual friends. Tim was hesitant at first, but Rachel's enthusiasm was infectious. He agreed, deciding to face his fears head-on. As they sat around the crowded table, laughter and the clinking of glasses filled the air. Rachel leaned over to Tim, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You know, I think you guys could really hit it off. Mike's a gamer too." Tim's stomach twisted, but he forced a smile. "Maybe." The night was a roller coaster of emotions. Rachel was her usual charming self, flitting between Tim and Mike with ease, making sure everyone felt included. Mike was indeed a gamer, and Rachel had been right, they had a lot in common. As they swapped stories of epic battles and late-night gaming sessions, Rachel watched them with a knowing smile. As the evening wound down, Tim found himself walking Rachel to her car. The cool breeze whispered through the leaves above, casting dappled shadows on the pavement. Rachel took his hand, her touch reassuring. "I know you're still hurt about Laura, but I want you to know that I've learned from that. I'm not going anywhere, Tim." Tim looked into her eyes, feeling the warmth of her hand in his. "I know." He knew that Rachel had grown, just as he had. They had both made mistakes, but they had also learned the value of communication and trust. The following week, Tim received a text from Laura. It was short and to the point. "Miss our gaming nights?" Tim felt a rush of nostalgia and a hint of hope. He typed back, "More than you know." Perhaps, just perhaps, they could all find a way to coexist in this delicate dance of friendship and love. Maybe the ultimatum was a lesson learned, a bridge that could lead to understanding and growth, not just loss. The future was uncertain, but Tim felt a newfound strength in knowing that he had faced his fears and come out the other side, ready to conquer whatever challenges life threw their way. The text from Laura was a beacon of hope, a chance to reconnect without the shadow of their past hanging over them. Tim replied immediately, "More than you know," and soon, they were planning a gaming night, including Rachel and Mike. Rachel had been insistent on inviting Laura, hoping to build a bond between them all. And when Mike mentioned that he was into gaming too, the pieces fell into place. The night of the gaming marathon arrived, and the tension in Tim's apartment was palpable. Laura walked in with a tentative smile, her eyes meeting Tim's briefly before darting away. Rachel had decorated the room with a festive spread of snacks and drinks, trying to set a lighthearted tone. Mike, ever the charmer, broke the ice with a cheesy joke about their digital opponents not knowing what hit them. Laura chuckled, and the room relaxed a notch. As the night progressed, the four of them found themselves immersed in a co-op campaign that had them laughing, strategizing, and occasionally shouting at the screen. Laura and Mike turned out to be a surprisingly dynamic duo, their gaming styles complementing each other perfectly. Rachel, the newcomer to their digital escapades, held her own with surprising skill, thanks to the patient guidance from Tim. The hours ticked by, and the air grew thick with camaraderie. The competition was friendly, the banter playful. Laura and Tim exchanged glances that spoke of shared memories, but there was no anger or resentment, only a quiet acceptance of the new landscape before them. And as they watched Rachel and Mike high-five each other over a particularly challenging boss battle, Tim felt a strange warmth in his chest. This wasn't just about gaming anymore, it was about finding common ground, about allowing room for growth and change. As they played into the early hours of the morning, the four of them discovered a bond that transcended their previous boundaries. They weren't just a couple with a third wheel anymore, they were a quartet of friends, each bringing something unique to the table. The game nights grew into a regular ritual, a time for them to unwind and connect beyond the confines of work or coupledom. Rachel and Laura even started hanging out without Tim, a sign that their friendship had moved beyond the shadow of his ultimatum. And as Tim watched Rachel and Laura become fast friends, sharing inside jokes and stories from their own lives, he knew that their relationship had evolved into something far more profound than he could have ever imagined. Life had a way of throwing curveballs, but sometimes, if you caught them just right, they turned into home runs. This trio of gaming adventures was one such curveball, and Tim, Rachel, Laura, and Mike were ready to run the bases together. They had all learned that trust was a two-way street, and that with a little bit of courage and understanding, even the most unlikely of friendships could flourish. And as they sat there, controllers in hand and hearts open, Tim knew that this was a team he was proud to be a part of. The nights grew longer, the battles more intense, and the camaraderie grew stronger. Laura had a knack for finding the most obscure Easter eggs in games, leaving Mike and Rachel in awe. Mike, on the other hand, had a strategic mind that could predict enemy patterns before they even appeared. Rachel, the charmer, had a way of keeping everyone's spirits up, even when they were on their last lives. And Tim, the glue that held them all together, found joy in watching them grow closer, his fears of the past slowly fading away. One particular night, as they navigated a sprawling open-world game, they stumbled upon a hidden quest that required perfect coordination and timing. Laura's sharp eyes spotted it, Mike's tactical mind mapped it out, Rachel's charm won them the necessary allies, and Tim's steady hand saw them through to victory. It was a moment of pure synergy, a symphony of clicks and keystrokes that left them all grinning like fools. They high-fived and cheered, the sound of their laughter bouncing off the walls of Tim's living room. Their friendship grew beyond the glow of the screen. They shared stories of their childhoods, their hopes and fears, their quirks and secrets. Laura opened up about the loneliness she'd felt since her last breakup, and how Tim's ultimatum had left her feeling isolated. Mike shared his passion for cooking, and soon, they were planning dinner parties where he'd whip up feasts for them to enjoy between rounds of games. Rachel revealed her love for painting, and before they knew it, the apartment walls were adorned with her vibrant artwork. And Tim, the silent guardian of their little group, found solace in the knowledge that he had not just one, but 3 people who cared for him deeply. Their friendship grew into something more profound than Tim had ever imagined. They were no longer just a couple with a third wheel. They were a quartet of kindred spirits, bound by pixels and pixels of shared experiences. And as they sat there, surrounded by the warm glow of their screens and the comforting hum of their consoles, they knew that they had found something special, a bond that transcended jealousy and misunderstanding, a bond forged in the digital fires of dragons and aliens, of dungeons and space stations, a bond that, if given the chance, could conquer any challenge that the real world threw at them. One evening, as Rachel painted a stunningly lifelike portrait of a video game character, Mike mused, "You know, Rach, your art is incredible, and my cooking isn't half bad either. What if we combined our talents?" Rachel looked up from her canvas, a smudge of paint on her nose, and grinned. "What are you thinking?" "How about a gaming-themed pop-up restaurant?" Mike suggested, his eyes lighting up. "We could serve dishes inspired by our favorite games, and you could decorate the place with your art." Tim and Laura exchanged glances, the same excitement sparking in their eyes. Laura spoke up. "That's genius. And think of the marketing potential. Gamers everywhere would flock to it." The idea grew legs and began to run. Rachel's artistic talents were a perfect match for Mike's culinary skills. They spent hours brainstorming menus, themes, and even a name for their new venture. "Palette and joystick," Rachel exclaimed, and it stuck. The first palette and joystick pop-up was a smash hit. Gamers from across the city lined up around the block for a taste of Mike's Hyrulean stew and Rachel's master sword skewers. The walls were adorned with her vibrant, video game-inspired art, and the playlist was a mix of classic game tunes that had everyone's toes tapping. Laura handled the logistics with her usual flair, and Tim's social media promotions had gone viral. The 4 of them worked tirelessly, their friendship stronger than ever. The success of their first pop-up led to more, each one more extravagant than the last. They transformed empty spaces into immersive game worlds, complete with cosplaying waitstaff and interactive elements that brought the games to life. It wasn't just about the food and art anymore. It was about creating a community, a haven for those who understood the joy of losing themselves in digital lands. But as the buzz grew, so did the pressure. The long hours and constant planning began to take a toll on their personal lives. Tim and Rachel's relationship had always had its ups and downs, and now, with this new venture demanding so much of their time, cracks began to show. Laura and Mike, too, felt the strain, as the lines between friendship and business grew blurry. One night, after a particularly hectic day of prep for their latest pop-up, Laura looked at Tim, her eyes weary. "This is amazing, Tim, but are we sure this is what we all want?" Tim sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't know, Laura. Sometimes I feel like we're losing ourselves in all of this." Mike looked up from his recipe book, a frown creasing his brow. "You guys are right. Maybe we need to take a step back and remember why we started this in the first place." Rachel set down her paintbrush, her hand trembling slightly. "We did this to bring people together, not to tear us apart." The room fell silent, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall, a reminder of the time slipping away. They had built something amazing, but at what cost? They decided to take a breather, to sit down and talk about their feelings. It was a hard conversation, full of tears and accusations, but it was necessary. They had to remember that their friendship was the foundation upon which Palette and Joystick was built. Without it, the whole thing would crumble. After that night, they took a step back, re-evaluating their priorities. They agreed to scale back the pop-ups to a more manageable level, to make sure that their friendship remained the heart of their venture. They learned that success didn't have to come at the cost of their happiness, that sometimes, the most important thing was just to press pause and appreciate what they had. And so, the Palette and Joystick continued, albeit more modestly. The 4 of them grew closer. their friendship stronger than ever. They had found the balance between their passions and their personal lives, a feat more challenging than any video game boss they had ever faced together.